Campbell, a huge welcome to the Lead on Purpose podcast.
Thank you. Thanks.
So great to finally connect with you. I know that you're in demand. I know that people want to connect and learn more about your story. You've got an incredible story and such a high performer. And we're gonna jump into those high performance moments, what they meant to you, how you got there. And I guess to get the ball rolling, I'd really love to know, where did your passion for rugby truly begin?
I think my passion for rugby truly began like many other, Kiwi kids. Probably hundreds of thousands of Kiwi kids had this passion when they were younger. And it was around about when I was 4 or 5, and I was lucky enough to have older brothers, and they were playing, rugby in the backyard, or in our case, it was, we're on a farm, so it was in the back paddock. And I jumped in, would be playing, rough and tumble stuff with them at an early age, and just really, really enjoyed that sort of idea. And then I think I just basically begged my parents to let me play a game when I was 4, I think it was, in my second oldest brother's team, because it was the closest one to my age that probably was suitable. And they were like, okay, just, probably because they just had enough of me nagging them. They were just like, yeah, fine, out you go. And from that moment, I just loved it. I mean, even though there's, as a kid, there's no structure or anything like that, it was just the whole idea of just running about, that chasing the ball, tackling, the combat, everything just really appealed to me. And also, I guess our household was sports mad, and my father especially. And, you have that coming through, and you're always watching sport, and you always got the All Blacks, always on TV, and it just resonates with you, that whole passion and desire that you just want to, to achieve that level of what you see on TV, that, these awesome, amazing legends of the game. And they're just, for a kid, they seem like, seem like gods to you. But yeah, so that's where it started, really. It was
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that. And I guess when you think of a Kiwi kid, so I've got a little boy who's about to turn 7, the idea of becoming an All Black is an absolute dream. And it's such a difficult thing to achieve because only a certain amount of people can do it. And they've only got a little window in their lifetime to actually achieve it. So when did that start to seed in the back of your mind? When did you start to think, that's exactly what I want and I'm going to get after it?
That probably, that whole idea of wanting to be an All Black, honestly, it probably was when I was about 4 or 5. That seed was there. I had just this massive drive and just desire to want to be an All Black, and I knew I didn't really understand the process of getting to an All Black or how you do it. All I knew is I wanted to be there, and then I just sort of fell into things and games and rep teams, and then when you start making rep teams and you start, I think the first rep team I made was in Hawke's Bay here. There's a competition called the Ross Shield, which is a big competition in Hawke's Bay for age for school kids. It's around 11 and 12, and it's a weight categorized tournament of under 52 kilos. And so I played for Hastings East was the team, and then I was lucky enough to make the Hawke's Bay, which they call the Hawke's Bay primary school team. And then when you make these teams, that adds fuel to the desire, and it just makes you, you suddenly start seeing the steps that have to be done. You start, cogs start turning in your head and thinking, okay, so this step got me here, Hastings East, and then this Hastings East step now took me to Hawke's Bay Primary. What's my next step? What's my next step? And that was how I programmed it really in my head. So I suppose that is a kind of goal setting, but in a very raw sense.
I think it's brilliant. And it's unintentional, but you knew exactly where you wanted to go. That was the back of your mind. And then it was one step at a time. And I guess what I'm hearing is you built your self-belief. Every time you did something or achieved something, it started to build that inner belief. Yeah.
And also, you see, so the other teams, I would look and see, like, okay, so Hawke's Bay Primary is the rep team I've made now, and then I'd look and ask people, well, so what are these other teams above, up here? And, when you're 13, 14, and I was lucky enough to have, coaches that helped me along the way. They'd say, this is maybe, I think it was Hawke's Bay under 16s, and then it goes into New Zealand under 16s. Oh, sorry, under 16s, Hawke's Bay, then it goes North Island under 16s, then it goes New Zealand under 16s. And I was like, oh, okay, so interesting. So that's that path there. I'll just lock that in and work towards that.
I love it. It's so pragmatic. And I think that's when I talk to great performers or leaders, when they start to explain their process, it comes back to pragmatism. Like, hey, I just knew where I wanted to go, and it was one step at a time. And I guess a big thing for me is I always think of my own childhood and what I did as a performer. And a big part of it was the influence of my parents and caregivers and coaches. Like, they were huge. So for you, who would you say are one or two people that had the most profound influence and impact on your life?
Well, probably like a lot of people, is your parents have a massive impact. But my parents had an impact in the sense that they never forced me into playing rugby or forced me into doing anything, but they always had the saying, or if whatever we wanted to do, whatever we tried to do, as long as we gave it 100%, then that's fine. As long as we went at it 100%, go and do it. And also with my parents, they had so much, they sacrificed so much, like taking me to games and getting up early and driving all over the country just to, take this kid to his rugby game. And I think back to when I was like, I think it was maybe 13, 14, and 15, those years when I was at high school, when rugby got called off because of rain or because the fields are too wet or it was school holidays, I was an absolute nightmare around the house. Like, I was a real pain. And my dad would actually sit down and ring all his mates and ring anybody he knew that had a team that was playing and ask them, look, do you want someone to come and sit on the bench? I've got Campbell here, you can come and sit on the bench and just look, you just have to entertain him for an hour. That's all you have to do. And and he'll be happy.
That's so good.
Yeah. And so, dad would do that. And 9 times out of 10, he'd get me a game and off we'd go. And for him, and I guess for mum as well, it was like, we got that angry kid out the door and he's now going to be happy for the rest of the week. That's great. And then, going through school, I had a few really good coaches, and I was fortunate enough in that area. I had a coach called Michael Alex Matthewson, who was a ex-hooker and played a little bit overseas for Wasps and things like that. And my father knew him, and he sort of was coaching Hawke's Bay Primary School when I first made it. And then he sort of helped me, understanding, I guess, rugby a little bit more and a little bit more clarity around, some structure and things like that. And then at high school, there was my first team coach was a guy called Grant Gilbert, and he was very influential in my in my early days in my career, especially because he came up to me and said that you should look at playing in a nice way. You should look at playing in the front row. I think it would suit you a lot better, because at that time I was playing number 8, and he was really meaning was you're not really going to be tall enough to carry on at number 8, and the other thing is, you probably don't have the greatest hand-eye coordination to be a number 8 and skill set. So, but you've got this massive, I guess, drive and desire to achieve. How about you try the front row? He said, I really think it'll suit your game, and he gave me a book. It was an article in Rugby World magazine, I think it was back then, the English publication. And it was an article written by Jason Leonard. about playing front row and the skills and the technique and the key strengths that were needed. And I read the article and I remember reading it thinking, yeah, this sounds pretty cool. This sounds a pretty good position. And I thought, yep, I'm going to do it. And so I jumped straight in and learnt it. And I read lots more about Jason Leonard, and he probably became a little bit of a mentor or a player that I looked up to at the time, and sort of watched his techniques and his articles, any articles he wrote or whatever, I try and find, and and Grant Gilbert would help me with all that. So there were some key people, and then as I got further, when I went to Canterbury, some influential people down there were the likes of there was Steve Hansen, there was Wayne Smith, which need no explaining there, and there was also a guy called Rob Penny, who was a coach down there, and he was really good. Rob Penny was a great help with me just on the whole. Just keeping focused idea and not getting too don't beat yourself up when problems arise and that. So and just on the skill set as well, Rob Penny was really good. But I think every coach that I've had has had their little bit of influence in my career, and I've always taken I don't think there's any coach that I haven't learned something from, which is I just thought of that. I don't think there's any coach that I haven't learned anything from, which is I think I've been very fortunate in that sense, or I've just been able to find points that need to fix my game and take it from there and that. So yeah.
That says a lot about you, Campbell, and I think, well, I know not everyone is coachable. Some people's ego gets in the way, their self-defense, their lack of self-esteem, and they just can't take feedback. And you've probably had players around you or people around you, and you've seen that happen. And I think the people who rise to the top are people who can take it on the chin and go, you're right, I didn't play the way I should have, or, I've got something that I've got to improve. So I think that says a lot about your psychology. It says a lot about your willingness to grow.
Yeah, no, you're right there. I guess because I'd set the bar so high that every game I played was never really going to be up to the standard or the level required. So there was always going to be improvement, and there was always going to be a need for someone to critique, someone to just give you proper and real feedback, real constructive, proper feedback. And I guess also, given I guess my makeup is something that I'd rather someone just come up and just say straight to me, look, you had a terrible game, like you played absolute this, look at this, and then for me that's perfect, instead of coming up and going, oh yeah, your game was okay. It's like softly, never really worked for me. Just pretty much being blunt with me was the best way, and I guess a lot of coaches, to their credit, knew that was the best way for me, and they just said it and then helped me. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that's crucial, is just being open to it and having the right coach that knows how you like to be coached. That's crucial.
Yeah.
And in terms of that next step, so you came to Canterbury, and obviously that would have been a great training ground. There would have been a lot of learned lessons there, good lessons, tough lessons. What was the step then up to the All Blacks? What did that look like? When did you get the big call up?
So obviously, yeah, so there was Canterbury, which I came down to in 1997, I think it was, a few years back. And then, so the steps were obviously the Canterbury, there was various rep teams within Canterbury Colts, under 19 Colts, I think, and then I made the step into Canterbury. And then from there, the step was the Crusaders. And so I made the step to the Crusaders. And then I sort of knew that I had one last step to, take, and I just had to just, buckle down and really try and fix a spot in the Crusaders where I was getting regular game time and people, selected were seeing me in that. And it was 2005, I think we had the campaign with the Crusaders, and I was getting a fair amount of regular game time. And then I was selected for the All Black trial. They reinstated, I think, brought back the All Black trial in 2005, and that was held in Napier. So I made it into the trial, and we, as Crusaders, won the Super 14 that year, and then so we had the final on the weekend, and then the next weekend after the final we had the All Black trial. So we had a few days of celebration, and then we had to go up to the trial and train and prepare and and then play the game on Saturday. And it was quite a surreal experience, really, because I was really, really relaxed. Like, for me, for some reason, it seemed like it seemed like deja vu. It seemed like because I'd played this over and over in my head 1,000 times, this whole sequence of making that final step, no matter how it was, there was the whole sequence, and there was a game there, and it was just like, it seemed, it went really quick. It could have been because I was probably quite excited and really, just pumped to be there. But the whole feeling was very relaxed. And then I remember coming off after the game thinking, I'd played okay, and I thought, oh yeah, sweet, that was good. Now, my thought process was, now I've got the first chance there, and I honestly didn't really think it was going to happen that year. I sort of had the process that it would be a two-step in my own head. I'd write, you get a trial, you get, you cut your teeth on that, and then the following year, that's your big one. That's your big one. But I was surprised and a little bit shocked, and was named in the team after the trial that year. So that sort of brought things forward a little bit for me.
It's incredible. And I want to just unpack one thing you said there. You talked about you were confident, there was a relaxed confidence when you were there because you'd played it through in your mind a lot. So that idea of visualization, the more people, whether they're leading countries or companies or they're athletes, they talk about visualizing the end outcome or visualizing the goal. So what did that look like for you, leading into Canterbury, into the Crusaders, into the All Blacks? Where did visualization show up for you?
I'd probably visualize probably every day about, being an All Black or in a smaller sense. I would visualize my games. I'd visualize my scrum technique, key points that I wanted to achieve in the game. I'd got quite quite anal about everything in rugby, as I would set 4 goals before a game, and that would be my focus point. So I'd visualize those goals leading up that whole week of where I wanted to improve and things like that. And then on a larger scale, I'd be visualizing the whole All Black childhood dream as well. It was probably always just burning in the back of my head the whole time. And then as I finally got to this trial match, it was quite surreal and almost deja vu. It's like, oh yeah, I've been here. I kind of know what's going on here.
It's amazing. It's so powerful. Like when you use it to that extent, it's interesting chatting to John Key a few years back. He was talking about when he was about 9 or 10, and he visualized and then spoke out and said, Mom, I'm going to make $1 million. And then after that, I'm going to become the Prime Minister of New Zealand. And he believed it, he said it, he repeated it, and then he thought about it throughout his entire life. So I think that high performers and people who do succeed at what they set out to do are continually playing that model, that visual model in their head. It sounds like that's really what supported you on your journey.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's something that was definitely, I guess it's a film clip that's just on repeat the whole time. It's just just going through your head.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would have shaped your decisions. It would have shaped your behavior, how you showed up, what time you got out of bed, what food you ate, all the different things that come with that.
Yeah, no, definitely. That was that was a big driving force, like, because everything you did was geared towards that end goal. Decisions you made, like, shall I don't know, go have a late party with my mates? Oh no, I won't, because I've got training and that, and because it will set me back, and then I don't want to be set back. I want you become very very hard nosed with your and somewhat selfish, really, but it's more of a inner selfishness that I guess that you start to drive. You do cut out a lot of niceties in your life, but it's all because you want to, and because it's where you want to get, and your family always recognize that, and they always support it, which is and so do your coaches and that. So yeah.
And some people would call those sacrifices, and I think it's fair to call them sacrifices, but I think when you want something so bad, you don't see it as a sacrifice, you see it as part of the process, right?
You see it as you see it as part of the process, and you also just see it as something that a roadblock, or something that's going to get in your road. If you're like, well, that's going to hold me back. So you see it more of a I guess as a roadblock. If it does get there, you're like, well, no, that's going to stop me. So that's out.
I love it. It's simple then, right?
Yeah, it is simple.
What about the people around you at that stage? If we think of like Canterbury, and then in the Crusaders as well, what about the people around you, your friends, your family? What were the sacrifices that they maybe had to make, or what did they have to go through? Because you had to stay really vigilant on your game, on your habits. But what was the experience like for them?
Well, I guess I touched on my parents' experience. Was the grumpiness, and that, the angry child who wasn't getting his rugby fix or his rugby game. But for me, I guess the only thing was that my parents they sacrificed a lot, but they probably more sacrificed their time taking me to places and things like that. But other than that, they were very supportive. More than anything, they would they would see me training and encourage it, and they would never say, oh, I think you've done too much, or anything like that. They'd always be incredibly supportive. Friends and that probably probably always you sacrifice a little bit of the I guess the social life and things like that. But I never really, no friends of mine really had bad comments or anything about that, because they all I guess they all knew that if they made a bad comment, then I guess they'd be out as well. That would be them cut as well. So they were just like, oh yeah, we can't make this event. That's fine. He's focused on his rugby. So yeah, I was probably very lucky that I had very supportive family and friends, and that, and with teammates as well, and especially the Crusaders in Canterbury. Everyone was in the same mindset, and we had great theming and great culture driven by the coaches. Like Robbie Deans was amazing at creating awesome culture and theming within the team. And to get everybody on board on the same goal. And the mindset was that if you saw someone that wasn't on the bus with us, you wouldn't kick the dog while he was down. You'd get the dog back on the bus. You'd help that guy with whatever he was going through, or whatever he was struggling with it, mental skills, whatever. We'd all help and get him back on the bus, because we had the understanding that everybody had to be on that bus for us to be successful.
And that's incredible. And I think about what you're saying there. So you've got the skill set, which to be a great performer in any field, you've got to have skills. And then you've got the mindset and the heart set. And that's, the heart set's the believability, the intention, how you show up. But that mindset, for a moment, if we just focus on that, what do you think was a winning mindset? So when you were playing your best, when you were showing up, you were doing your job brilliantly, how would you describe that mindset?
I'd probably describe that mindset was happiness. You're really happy in a space that was really good and confident and just happy with everyone around. Everyone was in a good mood. Everyone was focused. It was a real atmosphere of I'd say happiness would be there wasn't that. Sometimes there is that underlining current of just anxiety and everything of, oh, we've got to win, and it puts a lot of pressure, and there is always that there. But the best times that we were going and running as a team, when we were all happy and we all had so much fun and enjoyment in the game, that the winning factor was there, but it just came with it, because it was getting carried with that whole. It was just it's hard to describe, but I hope I've tried my hardest there. But it just flowed with us where our positive energy was going, I guess.
Yeah, it makes sense. And if you think about that feeling, like everyone having that mindset of like, there's contentment, there's happiness, we're having fun. What do you think were some of those key ingredients that led to that? What were the things around you in your environment, or in training or in coaching? What were the wee things around you guys that helped you be in that state of presence?
So I honestly believe that we set out at the start of the season, we'd have theming, and we set out our direction of where we wanted to be and what we wanted to achieve in this competition. And so everyone had the goals and had the desires and the team idea of where we wanted to be. We all preset it at the start of the season in a big meeting and that, and so it naturally just was lodged in your consciousness that winning this competition is where we want to be, but we didn't actually really say that out loud. It was more, everyone sort of knew that was where we wanted to be and knew it was one of our main driving points. But also there was, each week we had, we had this enjoyment factor that was growing as everyone was playing better, everyone's skills were getting better. The competition in our trainings was, going to another level where, you saw guys, for me, Robbie would do these little games of passing skills in our mini teams, and for me, the catch and pass long pass is difficult, but I worked on it, and then my long pass was coming along, and everyone was like, awesome, CJ's got his long pass going, or another player might have been struggling with actually passing off the other, the left or the right side, whichever, and then they'd work on it, and then in these competitions, everyone would be like, oh, awesome, he's got that nailed, and it'll just drive everyone to want to improve their micro skills and what they were letting their mini teams down at, because everyone was like, oh, I don't want to let my mini team down, because letting my mini team down is not only going to let that team down and we'll lose points in our little group, but as a bigger picture, it was actually going to hurt us as a team in the competition. So so there was this really interesting driving factor that was built around competition and winning, but it was coined as a fun, enjoyable exercise.
Incredible. I love it. And that takes, to me, craftsmanship as a leader, as a coach, to be able to create that vision and keep people on the bus. And it's not easy. Now, one of the biggest things, Campbell, I'd say, working with athletes, that I've found one of the biggest challenges is external viewpoints. You've got the keyboard warriors, and then you've got the media. How did you feel in terms of a player when you were playing, say, Crusaders and All Blacks level? Where did the media and other people's comments show up for you, and was there any negative impact for you?
Well, I was just the front rower, so we hardly ever got any media. But I think the key media stuff that I read, and when it was talking about our team, Crusaders, and that was in the newspaper, and I think the press was one that we'd have in the team room, and you'd read that every Monday they'd do a big spread on the team and how everyone went, and they'd rank the players and give them their own what they thought the rating was, and you tried not to look at it, but you always did. I mean, you always had a look, and you're like, what? Why is he rating me like that? What have I done? And to be honest, I think it was it became a driving factor. You're like, oh, okay, that guy, I'm going to do better next weekend. I'm going to go hard and really, really lift the game up this time. And then when they made comments about the team and in a general sense that they might say Crusaders or Canterbury had a poor game, that was it does hurt those comments, because they're talking about almost like talking about your family. You've tried really hard that week, and it does affect you, but in a positive sense, it makes you drive, and it makes you want to get back in there and actually prove them wrong. I mean, I always thought it was always best just to forget about the media and don't make comments or reply to them. Just let your game do the speaking, and your results be the answers that they can take from it. So that was that was how I sort of viewed it.
That's brilliant. And not all players have that approach, and sometimes it can cripple them. And I think that's really amazing, that embrace the positive psychology side of it. Would you, reflecting back a few years ago now, but would you say that some of your leaders within the team, whether that was captains or coaches, was there conversations around managing your mindset with the media and what the media have to say?
Yeah. I think there was, because and the Crusaders were probably very lucky that a lot of our captains were legends of the game, and they were constantly hit by the media. So in a sort of a trickle down effect, they would sort of see if someone had made a bad poor comment about you in the media, they would give you guidance and say, don't worry about that, just ignore it, and prove them wrong. So we were lucky that our leaders in our team had gone through this, and were always going through it, and so they had already established a coping mechanism, and they were sharing it and passing it down to us all. And I think that's the other great thing of the teams that I've always played with, Crusaders, Canterbury, and Barretts and things like that, is that the leadership of the top leaders have always passed down and helped and passed on information to the people coming through. And you see other teams where sometimes the leaders just keep it to themselves and just try and just keep moving the ship along, where and everyone sort of falls off a little bit. But we were very fortunate that we guys that had been through constantly going through media hound and all that, and then they'd see the young guys or see other guys get bad comments, and they'd actually give them some helpful words about don't worry about that, let's just move on and just prove them wrong next week. Keen for that, and you'd be like, yeah.
I love it. And it's interesting when I think of a leader, whether this is in a corporate setting, team setting, organization setting, the leader has a lid, I would call it a lid, and that lid represents their awareness, their emotional quotient, how they deal with people, their intelligence. And I feel like wherever that leader's lid is, everybody else in the team comes up to that lid and cannot go any further. So effectively the team and organization stops wherever the leader is. And so I definitely think leadership development and people developing their skills, reading books, getting input from other coaches or mentors, the more the leaders lift, then you're right, it kind of drags everyone with that leader.
Yeah, exactly. No, I completely agree. Yeah.
And the black shirt, so day one, first game, go back to that game. What did it mean to you to be presented with it and then to actually wear it?
It was just pure excitement. The week leading up to it, I can't recall much. I remember the trainings and that, but I was, pretty, on cloud nine, really, just, running around, just thinking this is just an ultimate dream come through. And then on the Saturday when I remember the bus ride in and to the game, and then I remember actually walking into the locker room and seeing the black jersey hanging there, and this was the object of my complete basically existence. For me in my head, my existence on the planet was right there, and I remember grabbing it, and obviously being able to touch it the first time, and the actual real thing, it's it's not just one in a shop. It's it's got a lot more magic than one in the shop, and I remember smelling it, and I remember all my childhood memories come flooding back in the backyard, and I remember all my games sort of, I know it sounds corny, but all the games I played sort of just came flooding back, and just this whole real I guess emotional and exciting moment in my career was there, and yeah.
Yeah, as you say that, I've got like the goosebumps just listening to it. It's a special moment, and a couple of things that I pick out of that I think are really crucial is you've seen it and it invoked an emotion, then you smelt it, you touched it. And it's interesting because when you look at people who bring their dreams to life, who get to the top of their game, they always use their modalities, hearing, sight, touch, taste, smell, to think about the goal. But then when they actually reach the goal, they take it in, they literally breathe it in. And so it's really fascinating to hear you describe that moment and then talk about your modalities and you smelling it and touching it. And it's really cool.
Yeah, no, it was it was definitely yeah, it was almost like the holy grail of
absolutely
everything. So it was pretty exciting. Yeah.
And one special moment, I don't think it's ever appropriate to say what was the one highlight of your All Blacks career, but what was the one special moment that you'd love to share? One thing that was really cool, like a moment you'll never forget.
I guess the one moment that I'll probably never forget, and this is completely left field, is when the team was announced, because they announced it privately to the players who played the trial match, and then they said, it's not going to be announced publicly until the following day. So please don't. You can tell your loved ones, family, and that's it. Please don't go ahead and tell anyone else. And obviously, at that time, Instagram and Snapchat and all that wonderful social media wasn't around, so they weren't too concerned about that. And I remember, because it was in Hawke's Bay, my home province, my parents were there, and I remember going to see mum and dad afterwards, and I walked into the house and they were like, "Oh, how you going?" And just casual, because they're very laid back, and they said, "Oh yeah, it was a good game, well done, but you've got next year to improve and get on with things." And I was like, yeah, because they kind of knew my step process, and they sort of, and because they'd known me so long, they'd worked out that I probably was aiming for the following year. And then I sort of just said to them, I was like, "Oh, yep, no, yeah, you definitely can focus on next year, but this year I think I might focus on the All Blacks, because I made the team." And mum sort of stopped, and she was like, "Oh, okay," and she gave me a hug. And then dad just carried on talking about some other conversation that he was going on about, and he hadn't sunk in or dropped or realized. And then mum was like, and then he sort of turned around and was looking and was like, why is your mother hugging you? Like, what's up? And then suddenly it all, you could see it all just going through. He was just going back through the conversation, going, "Hang on. Oh, he's just made the All Blacks." And then he got up and gave me a hug and a handshake, and that was like, yeah. So that was that's probably the moment that probably sticks out the most. And
That's amazing, because they were with you from day dot. They seen the passion with that 4-year-old Campbell, and then your passion as a teenager, and for you to bring that to life, it's a huge moment that they'll never forget.
Yeah, and maybe they also thought, well, thank God he's he finally made that, because he was driving us crazy.
I love it. And towards the end of the career, did you get to decide when you were going to step down, or was that kind of decided for you?
So with the All Blacks, that was that was decided purely on selection basis after the Lions series. So I was what they said was rotated out, and new people came in purely based on performance, which it's hard to take, but you understand, and you realise, and you're given feedback on what you need to improve and where to work on, and told to go back to the Canterbury and work on my my areas of need, and then readdress it in the following campaign. And then my decision to go overseas was based purely around I always had a desire to go overseas. It was just a matter of when, and I'd come to a conclusion and being told, there's a few younger players coming through, and at the Crusaders, we had White, Crockett, the Franks brothers coming through, and you're alongside these guys, and you're training with them, and they're younger than you, and they're stronger, and they're bigger, and they're you get the feeling that they are going to be good. And this is the other great thing about the Crusaders is everyone passed on information. There was no one barricading their position, or so everyone was just open, and if the guy below you is better and is coming through, then you're going to support him, and you're going to get him there, because a winning team and winning the competition is best for everyone. So there's always that, and so there was that hot on the heels, and I had been given a little whisper that I might not be in the protected. Let me think, the protected 22 or 23, I think it was back then, as a Crusader, and I thought to myself that I had no desire to play anywhere else in New Zealand. I just didn't want to play anywhere else. If I couldn't play for the Crusaders or Canterbury in New Zealand, then I think I decided that I'd go overseas. So that was my thinking. So that was how that all evolved.
Incredible. Thank you for sharing that. And overseas, so France and Russia, and some big moments. What else took part overseas? What were your highlights?
So obviously France was a major part of my overseas. I played at the Ritz Olympic for 4 or 5 years, and that was incredible. Like just being able to measure yourself against the I always thought was one of the best forward play, toughest forward competitions in the top 14. And the French competition is one of the toughest forward competitions out there. Their scrumming, their line outs, their everything. They really embrace the scrum over there. So for me, that was a great test, and I enjoyed it immensely. And it was, as a tight head prop in France, you're treated like a king if the team's winning, because they understand that it's because of the tight head prop. But on the flip side, if the team loses, it's the tight head prop that's getting shunned in the town and yelled at and things like that. So they're very, very passionate. So that was awesome. I also remember they loved the scrumming so much that they would publish the training program of the team, the week training program, and they'd put the melee, which is French for scrum, on Tuesday and I think Thursday as well, and it would be in big bold writing, bigger than anything else on the thing. And I always wondered, why do we have the scrum training so massive on our play sheet or our week plan? And I found out that it's because they publish it and it goes around to all the supporters and all that. And then on that day, they all turn up for the scrum training. Like we had like, you know,
Wow.
2,000 or 3,000 people turn up just to watch scrum training.
That's incredible.
It was, yeah, it was amazing. And you sort of, it was almost like you do your weight session or your skills in the morning, and then you go and get your boots and you start walking out to the backfield where the scrum machine is and everything. And I remember doing the first time, and I was walking out and I was like, oh, is there a game on out here or what? And you're walking past all these, they're all lined up, you know, either side, almost like making a tunnel, and they're all just, you know, looking at you going, oh, that's Johnson, that's, Barcella, that's Martinet, and they're talking in French and that. And then you get to the scrum machine, and there's just a big, you know, they've roped it off, and there's a big crowd around it.
What do you think makes it? That's different from Ireland. That's different from New Zealand. You just wouldn't see that. Why do you think it's so different in France?
I honestly don't know. I think they really love the scrum, and they know that it's a critical point of the game where it's not just a restart, but it's a dominant act. Like it's a part of the game that if a team has a dominant scrum, then you know I guess it shows power, it shows strength, it shows everything. But I remember, I think Sean Fitzpatrick, I think, made the quote one time that he's never lost a game with a scrum going backwards. So I think the French just understand that the scrum is you know, for everything, for the backs to play well, they need a scrum to launch off, and everything like that. And we had a famous, you know, Serge Blanco was the French legend. Well, he was our president of our club, and he was, you know, adamant about the scrum as well, and all the players also knew. And you know, on the field, when it was time for a scrum and we had a big scrum, we'd have the fullback and the wingers all running in to congratulate the front row. It was like
it's amazing.
Yeah, it was nice.
Passionate, right? Like they're so passionate about what they do.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, it was great. So that was one of the, you know, big things I recall about France. And then there was Ospreys, where I played in Swansea. Yeah, that was cool. It was, you know, a nice part of the world, and I enjoyed it there. But I was only there for 1 year, and then I took off to Russia, and that was a very interesting place. Yeah, it was.
I bet. It's interesting when you talk about France, because I've got a friend, Adam, who played, and I think he might have played with Biarritz as well, and just talked so fondly of the experience and the crowd and the music and the chants and just the passion for the game. It's you're not the first person to say how amazing it is. Yeah,
I mean, like, I honestly, like, one of my biggest games that I actually fondly really remember, and you know, people ask me, like, a game that means a lot, or you know, you have fond memories about, you know, they think it might be your Super 14 victories and the All Blacks, and they are great games. I'm not taking anything away from that, but just there's always a derby match between Biarritz and Bayonne, which is a town which was only like 10 minutes down the road from Biarritz, and they also had a top 14 team. And wow. You know, and it was because we were both in the Basque country, in the Pays Basque, in the Basque country. We'd played in San Sebastian, which was in Spain, at the big soccer stadium there, Anoeta, which held like 40,000. And you know, both towns, I think, I think when that game was on, nobody was in either city. They were all down in Anoeta, and you know, one side was red and one side was blue, and it was just a massive occasion. Like it was, yeah. And then afterwards, just the you know, the celebration and the you know, camaraderie between both clubs, even though they absolutely hate each other. There's still, you know, that time, that small window after the game where everyone's just, you know, on that level where they're just a little bit too tired to think about the actual grudge or the match, and just want to eat and drink and just reflect on what a fantastic spectacle of rugby it was and experience. Yeah.
How special. Amazing. And if you would go back, is there anything you would do differently in your rugby career?
The one thing I probably would do different, and I don't know if it would have ever changed things or that, is that when I made the All Blacks, I forgot, I made the fundamental mistake of becoming very complacent. Like the All Blacks, as you probably realised during this whole conversation, the All Black was the goal. I forgot to actually reset that goal and refocus and say, right, okay, that's not the final step. I've got another step here. It's to be a great All Black, or it's to achieve 10 tests, or it's to achieve 15 tests. It's to keep moving that goal forward. And I forgot to reset that and lost my way. And I think there's a couple of reasons why. One was because for me to make the All Blacks, I was pretty well. I was fairly exhausted from the time to get there. Through a lot of things. One was I was never actually a big player. I was never a big guy, so I actually had to put weight on, and for me that was a massive struggle because I was actually quite small. So, and that was eating around the clock. Protein shakes at midnight, just constantly eating just to keep that weight so I could be in the 110, 112 kilo bracket where I could actually function where coaches thought ideally you should be to be able to function. So I achieved that goal, and I unfortunately forgotten to refocus, and then I went back to Canterbury and I again didn't refocus. I couldn't work the steps out of my head, if that makes sense, because I'd already achieved that goal. I couldn't work it out, and now I look back is that I can work the steps out of my head very clearly what I need to do, what I should have done. That's probably the only disappointment. Not disappointment, but the only thing that I'd possibly change. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think that takes a lot of honesty, and it's hard sometimes to go back and say that. And I truly see it in the corporate world and in the business world, where people will get to CEO and then forget, like, well, what's next? And so they stop growing, they stop developing themselves, they think they've arrived. And, I think a lot of us are guilty of that. Like, we have this big goal, we get there, well, what next? And, it's Neil Armstrong's a good example, flew, first man on the moon, came back and was very quickly turned into an alcoholic and lost all of his purpose around, well, what's next? Because he didn't think of where am I headed?
Well, yeah, I think you sum it up really well by saying, you've arrived at that goal, and you're like, you've clipped the bus ticket, you've hopped off, and you're like, oh, shit, I need to get another ticket now. I need to get onwards and upwards again. But it's hard to at the time. Yeah, at the time I was probably still overwhelmed by the whole experience. I was still on cloud 9. I probably dined out on that far too long, as one does. But I definitely see the steps that I should have taken now after that, and know that, and I definitely try and implement that now in my life, that'd be the one learning curve I would have thought for me.
That's huge. And look, I would say that you are truly leading on purpose right now. And recently you've come out and talked about your sexuality. And I think, as it's amazing, we need to be talking about this. We need to be bringing it to the fore. And one reason I want to talk about that is rugby, historically is seen as this real macho sport. And for rugby players to show, like, hey, this is who I am, sometimes that's hard, and there's a mask that almost gets forced on a player. I have to fit this mold. I have to do that. So if you're up for it, I would really love to chat about, what it took to work through your career and not talk about it. And then what the point at which you're like, what, enough's enough. I need to shine the light, and I need to help guide others who are in the same place to be able to shine the light. So let's have a chat about it.
Yeah, sure. Yep. Where do you want to start?
So when did you know,
So-
as a kid, as an adult, when did it all start to, like, you know what, this is who I am?
Yeah. So I kind of, well, as a kid, I kind of got an inkling, a knowing when I was probably about 14, 15 years old. I think I can actually, well, I can remember the time I was with my schoolmates, and they were all talking about, this girl she's pretty good looking, she's pretty, she's nice, and she's, got these sort of shapes and everything like that. You know what guys talk about.
Of course.
Yeah. And I remember sitting there in the conversation and going through my head, like thinking, I don't really see that. Oh, that's not really, I'm no, I don't see that. But I see, I've seen some guys that are, good looking and things like that. And so that was my first inkling. Is suddenly I was like, oh, I think I might be attracted to guys. I think I might be gay. And then I was like, suddenly I was like in my head thinking straight away to my biggest concern, my biggest, thing was like, how's this going to affect my rugby? How's this going to affect my goal? How's this going to affect my ultimate achievement, which I want to be an All Black? Because in my thinking, in my head, this idea of a gay All Black wasn't part of my my thought process. That should, to me, that was like, no, that should never, no, that's not meant to be there. That's not right. There's no All Black that's gay. I'm going to push that away, and I pushed it deep down and thought, well, I'll just hide that and we'll forget about that one. And so I found myself, it wasn't fitting my ideal vision that I had in my head, and probably the vision that, or the ideal All Black that, understandably how it was pitched around New Zealand was, of a masculine guy who's, straight and that. I mean, they didn't purposely say straight, but there was the whole environment that we lived in that was driving that. And so I just did what was best for my goal, which was to not front it, not to push it away, and to push it deep down and make sure that this, coin a phrase, this gayness didn't derail my my desire to be an All Black. So that was
what kind of pain was there? Any pain or suffering internally that showed up for you because you couldn't truly express your full self?
No, I don't think there was. There was the pain and suffering was more the fear that my gay side could derail my goal. That was what was I guess the biggest concern for me was, is this going to derail my ultimate desire, my whole thing I always wanted? Is this going to do that? And to me, I thought it potentially could. So I pushed it away, and I made sure it never rose its head, which is very unhealthy and incredibly bad for you. And ironically, it was really interesting because I spoke to a guy about this a few weeks ago. Is I developed a technique of using my gay side as a driving force to drive my rugby. So, I mean, it may sound logically just completely stupid, but if I had a bad game, wasn't selected, I would turn around and I'd blame that on because I'm gay. That's why I had a bad game. I've got to train harder. I've got to focus more. I've got to push that down even further, and I've just got to refocus. So, in a funny way, I probably have to thank my gay side for driving me. But it wasn't until later years, until my 20s, early 20s, that I realized that I couldn't keep driving on such a negative factor. I had to change that and find a more constructive and a positive way to drive me to my goals, because that negative factor was any time was going to explode, was going to blow up in my face. And it was just, I just completely have a complete utter breakdown because I've just lost it all. And that was where, a few coaches came, really helpful with that. And Rob Penny was one who, was always talked about, finding positive factors to drive you instead of trying to find self-hating factors to drive you.
That's really important. And Rob Penny, it's interesting. I've heard him be talked about quite a lot, and I'm really glad you brought him up, and just such an influential figure, particularly in this part of the world. I mean, it's so amazing that he could see that, hey, you are doing something that maybe is not so positive. He maybe didn't know the intricacies and ins and outs of it, but he could see that actually, there's an implosion waiting to happen. So what do you think about for a young player now, whether they're in their teens or their 20s, and they've got ambitions? And there's plenty of people listening right now that are not rugby players. They're leaders, they're parents, all different sorts. But what do you think? What would you say if you were living in this day and age right now? What would you do around that gay piece? Would you say, I'm going to be more open about it, I'm going to just embrace it? Where do you think the world is at right now?
I think, I think the world, the more we normalize it, the better it becomes for everyone. I think we're at a point in this world where it is getting, really normalized, and that was a discussion point when we decided to come out publicly, is that the reason why I hadn't done it previously was because I was still having internal battles with myself, and I was never, I still wasn't 100% comfortable with myself. And I use the old, the airline analogy when you're on the safety video where they say, oxygen mask will appear. Put yours on first before you help others, because, in that sense, meaning like if you aren't 100% happy or helped or secure, then you can't really help other people. And that was what, we talked about. And then now at this age, I'm 100% happy, comfortable. And I see to, Joe Malcolm and Rob Nicol that, I want to open up this door and do this, and understand that there will be a lot of media, which for me is a big step, because I'm, an incredibly private person. But I see, look, I want to open up the door. I don't want to run away from it. I want to just stand there and guide and help and stand by it and make it known that, this is actually normalizing. And for a young guy coming through, I think for me, it took, I think it was around, again, in my 20s when I actually realized, like, and this was a big turning point for me in my thinking, was that your goals aren't determined by your sexuality, your religion, your race. They're determined by your desire, the effort that you put in, and the willingness to follow them through. That's what determines them. It's nothing to do with this other things, your sexuality in my case, that I built up in my head. But once I realized that, then I could really drive that goal, and knew that, it was unstoppable. There were times in rugby and there was a real clinch point where I had so much anxiety, fear of people finding out, fear of it derailing my ultimate goal of being an All Black. And I'd come home and be at home just from training. I'd have a lot of anxiety, and then I'd go to training, and that anxiety would, for a funny reason, would just absolutely disappear, because I enjoyed this sport so much and I loved it so much, and all my teammates were so good that there was no question that I was ever going to give this sport up. And so I pretty much sat down and had a thought, well, I've got to do something, because this anxiety and everything is building, and it's not healthy. There's two things. One is to stop playing rugby, or two is to start telling people. And as I said, there was no way in hell I was going to stop playing rugby. So it was time to tell people. And I told my parents, for the first people I told, just out of pure respect. And for me, my family meant so much to me, and I knew that, I think it was a safe zone as well. I knew that they wouldn't have a problem. even though I built it up, because you build these things up in your head and you just keep building, you think that everyone's going to have a problem. But the reality is, well, in my case, no one had a problem. It's like telling them we've run out of milk.
And tell me this, what advice do you have for parents? There's lots of parents that listen in on the show. If, their child comes to them, or they're starting to see signs that, hey, this is maybe the way our child is and this is how they express. What advice do you have for them?
I don't know. I guess I think the only advice I'd give to them is just be happy that your child's decided to tell you, and be what's the word I'm looking for? Sorry, I've just forgotten the word I was looking for. It's quite a moment that they've actually, chosen you to confide that in. Like, it's that they obviously respect you. That's the word I was looking for. They obviously respect you enough that they want to tell you. Just be happy and I guess, be happy and supportive, and also, I think, ask questions. Like don't just brush it aside. I think it's very easy for people now, and parents and things, for when kids tell them this, they try not to over dramatize it, or make it an issue, or make it a big deal. But they've gone so far down that spectrum that when kids tell them, they're sort of like, oh, that's lovely, and move on. Then the kids sitting there going, oh, well, that wasn't a big deal, but it was kind of missing something. So I think they should be willing to be happy, be grateful, and that they've come to tell them. And then if they have questions, then just ask questions, because I think the more that parents and the kids can talk about it openly, there's more of an understanding and more of a normalization to it.
I'm so appreciative that you've said that. It's healthy for the parents to ask, and probably equally healthy for close friends to be like, hey, tell me more about that. I want to know more, like when and how does it feel and what's it like, and what is the world like around you because of who you are, and how can I help? Like, I think you saying that right now will help a lot of people. And I often think of discrimination in Northern Ireland. It was on religion.
Yeah.
So depending on where you're from, you might not get opportunities, or you might be bullied or beaten. Or in New Zealand, and then when I lived in North America, often discrimination was based on skin color.
Mm-hmm.
But I could equally imagine, based on sexuality, that there's major discrimination. And I can't speak from experience. I'd love to ask you, what's your experience been in terms of, is the world a bit different, and are you treated differently in any situations?
No, I've never come across that sort of experience. I mean, there's always there's always some people that will frown upon if you're holding hands in the street with my partner or something like that. But it's never, when I say frowned upon, or they always look at it, but I think it's more of a look of curiosity, or just a second take, like, is that, oh, it was, like, oh, it was two guys, I think. But and I'm not saying that there isn't any stuff out there that is bad, because there is, and I've been very fortunate to live in countries and places that have been fully open and respectful and fully diverse. Barring Russia, but that's a whole other story.
And tell me this, for the young guy out there who wants to be an All Black or wants to be PGA #1 golfer, Can he be just fully himself, embrace it, be open, and just get on with it and still achieve that goal? Do you believe that's possible?
Yep, I honestly do believe that that's possible, and it would be a more of a massive hurdle in that person's own head to overcome, because you build up in your mind, you build up all this angst and worry that people won't like you, or they'll disagree with it or anything like that. But but in reality is, people just don't care. And in sport especially, I think once you're in that competitive environment, or once you're in that environment, everyone else has that same focus on that same drive about winning, about achieving, about all, and even even all the even all the heterosexuals there aren't thinking about heterosexual stuff or anything. Like, it's all just, it's purely on the sports. And I think if a young person can work that through in their mind and know that it's normal, and I think with more people like myself coming out and normalizing it, then it'll be a lot easier for them to work it through their mind, and they can continue and be straight up focused on what their dream and desire is, and they can just follow that goal.
No, it's just incredible. I'm very, very grateful for you being who you are, and for coming out and telling the world and saying, hey, this is normal, and because the world needs to hear that. And it's so important. And we talked about you setting these goals, All Blacks and Crusaders, and then working back from them. What's next? What are you doing right now? What are you excited about? Where are you working towards in your life right now?
Working through to a few things with just exploring some talking stuff with the rugby union, getting around. Like, I'm pretty passionate to get around and just and share the story and share with the within rugby and in sport around New Zealand, the whole idea of this, of masculinity and all that isn't actually what it's about. It's about caring and awareness, and the fact that if you're in a team sport and you show caring and awareness to your teammates, and you understand what they're going through and they understand what you're going through, then it can make your whole team a lot stronger, because you have a bond and you actually have an understanding that someone's going through a little bit of a breakup with his girlfriend. I'll get alongside, have a cup of coffee with him, have a chat, just take his mind off it, so he can focus on training. And it also creates the fact, like, if someone's having a bad training, or a bad dropping the ball or something like that, there's a reason why that's happening. For someone who normally doesn't drop it, other than skills and things like that, but there's a reason. So get alongside them, instead of kicking the dog while it's down and barking at it and telling it to catch the thing and all that. Get alongside them afterwards and just find out, just give support, and you'll be amazed at how much that can actually help someone. Just knowing that there's people there that they can turn to, and in turn it'll make your team and your sport so much stronger, and you'll have this awesome bond that will you'll just be all focused and driven, and yeah. So.
That's really valuable, incredibly valuable. And I look forward to seeing you down here in Canterbury. Certainly, I'm sure down at the Canterbury rugby team, and you've spent a lot of time at Rugby Park.
Yeah.
So it'd be great to connect. And just before we wrap up, I'd love to ask you one last question. So if we were to fast forward right to the very, very end of your life, maybe we're in your late 90s, or with all the developments, you're in your hundreds, and it's your last day here on Earth, and you've got a very young person in your life who you love dearly and you want to see them succeed. And that person says to you, Campbell, I want to lead my life on purpose. What should I do? What would you say to that person?
I would say to them, just forget about what the ideal world is and what the ideal vision or what the world thinks should be ideal for what you're driving for, and just drive for it as you see it and go for it. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. That's powerful. Absolutely. I really appreciate it. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being who you are. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with you in person really soon.
Yeah, cool. Thank you very much, James. Really enjoyed the chat. It was awesome.
No, it's fantastic. Thanks, mate.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed the content today, please smash that subscribe button below. And if you want to become part of my community, I've got an amazing free Facebook group. Please come and join us. The link is in the description below. And also, if you've got any questions about today's session, I'd love to know. Just comment below and I'll be sure to get back to you guys. Have the most amazing day.